Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. The sound of Barbara's laughter floated up the stairs, sharp and sudden, cutting through the quiet hum of the late evening. It was a Thursday, and I was buried under a pile of reports, my eyes bleary from hours of staring at spreadsheets and market analyses. The laugh, usually a bright spot in my day, felt different this time, forced, even hollow. It wasn't the carefree sound I was used to hearing when Barbara was truly happy. I paused, my pen hovering above the paper, and listened more intently. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of voices, Barbara's, and then another, deeper voice, unmistakably belonging to Rudolph. He had become a fixture in our home over the past few months, his visits becoming more frequent and lingering longer each time. It didn't bother me at first. Rudolph was my best friend, after all, but lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I shook my head, trying to dispel the unease creeping into my thoughts. "You're overthinking it," I muttered to myself, forcing my attention back to the reports. But the numbers blurred before my eyes, my mind unable to focus. I found myself straining to hear the conversation downstairs, catching bits and pieces, laughter, a low murmur, then silence. I tried to push the doubts away, but they clung to me, heavy and insistent. I had noticed the way Barbara's demeanor had changed recently, subtle shifts that only someone who knew her well would pick up on. She had become more distant, her smiles not reaching her eyes, her touches fleeting and absent-minded. And Rudolph, who once seemed like a brother to me, had begun showing up more often, always at convenient times when I was occupied or away. The familiar clink of glassware reached my ears, followed by Rudolph's voice, closer now, as if they were in the kitchen. "You really outdid yourself with dinner tonight, Barbara," he said, his tone warm. "Thank you, Rudy," she replied softly, using the nickname that only close friends called him by. There was a pause, and I imagined them standing close to each other, exchanging a look that I wasn't privy to. "It's nice to have someone appreciate my cooking." "I always appreciate you," Rudolph responded, his voice barely above a whisper. That did it. I put down my pen and closed the laptop, the work forgotten. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. What was I hearing? Was I imagining things? I made my way down the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the bottom, I hesitated for a moment, the quiet of the house pressing in on me. I could see the soft glow of the kitchen light spilling into the hallway, the faint clatter of dishes signaling that they were still in there. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward the kitchen, forcing a casual smile onto my face. As I entered, Barbara looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "Henry, you're finished early," she said, her voice a little too bright, a little too quick. "Yeah, decided to take a break," I replied, trying to keep my tone light as I leaned against the doorframe, my gaze flicking between her and Rudolph. He was standing by the counter, his hand wrapped around a wine glass, the remnants of a meal scattered across the table. "How's the work going?" Rudolph asked, his tone as friendly as ever, but there was a tension in the room that hadn't been there before, or had it always been there, and I was just now noticing. "Busy," I said, shrugging, "but you know how it is." Barbara busied herself with clearing the table, her movements stiff, her smile strained. "Rudy stopped by with some fresh produce from the market," she explained, her back to me. "I thought I'd whip up something quick." "How thoughtful," I replied, watching them both carefully, searching for any signs that would confirm the growing suspicion gnawing at my gut. Rudolph took a sip of his wine, nodding. "Thought I'd check in on you too. Make sure you're not working too hard, Henry." "I appreciate that," I said, my voice steady, though inside I was anything but. The three of us stood there in an uncomfortable silence, the air thick with unspoken words. After what felt like an eternity, Rudolph finally set his glass down and cleared his throat. "Well, I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow," he said, glancing at Barbara before turning to me. "Take care, Henry. We'll catch up soon." "Sure," I said, nodding as he made his way toward the door. I watched him leave, my mind racing the questions I wasn't ready to ask. Not yet. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I turned to Barbara. She was still at the sink, her back to me, her shoulders tense. "Barbara," I said quietly, stepping closer. "Is everything all right?" She paused, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer, that she would keep her back to me like she had been doing for weeks now. But then she sighed, turning around slowly. "Of course, Henry," she said, her voice too calm, too measured. "Why wouldn't it be?" I searched her eyes, trying to find some sign of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had shared my life for the past 10 years. But all I saw was a reflection of my own uncertainty. "Just wanted to make sure," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She returned the smile, but it was as hollow as mine. "You worry too much," she whispered, stepping forward to place a gentle kiss on my cheek. "I'm fine, we're fine." But as she turned away, the weight of her words lingered in the air between us, heavy and insubstantial, like the cracks in a mirror that had yet to shatter. The unease stayed with me long after Rudolph left that night. I told myself it was just my imagination, too many late hours, too much stress from work. But deep down, I knew better. There was something between Barbara and Rudolph, something they thought they were hiding well. It gnawed at me, making it impossible to concentrate on anything else. I needed answers. The next morning, I woke up with a plan forming in the back of my mind. As Barbara kissed me goodbye before heading to her yoga class, I caught a whiff of her perfume, different from the one she used to wear. I tried to smile, but it felt forced, brittle. "I'll see you later," she said, her voice smooth and casual, as if everything were normal. "Yeah," I muttered, watching her leave. Once the door clicked shut behind her, I sprang into action. I had always been tech-savvy, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. In the closet upstairs, tucked away under some old boxes, I found the small surveillance cameras I had purchased months ago for our security system. Installing them in the house had been a project I never got around to, but now they had a different purpose. I moved quickly, feeling a strange sense of urgency. My hands trembled as I placed the tiny cameras in the living room, kitchen, and bedroom, hiding them carefully behind picture frames and air vents. I didn't want to do this. I hated the idea of spying on Barbara. But what choice did I have? The doubt had taken root, and it wouldn't let go until I knew the truth. Once the cameras were set, I downloaded the app on my phone that would allow me to monitor the footage in real time. The interface was easy to navigate, and within minutes, I had live access to every corner of our home. I stared at the screen, feeling both excited and sick to my stomach. I told myself I wouldn't check it obsessively, that I was only gathering evidence. But as soon as I sat back down at my desk to work, the app pinged, a motion alert from the living room. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively reached for my phone, swiping the screen to see what had triggered the notification. There was Barbara, sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand. I watched as she tapped out a message, her face unusually still. I couldn't make out what she was typing, but my gut told me it wasn't work-related. I zoomed in, leaning forward, eyes glued to the screen. A few minutes passed before another motion alert appeared, this time from the front door camera. My pulse quickened. It was Rudolph. He stepped inside, wiping his shoes on the mat and calling out in a tone far too casual for my liking. "Hey, Barb. Got your message. Everything all right?" I swallowed hard, waiting for her response. Barbara stood up from the couch, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Yeah, Rudy, I just needed to talk." "About what?" There was a pause, and then she walked toward him, her body language more relaxed, more intimate than it had been with me in weeks. "About us," she said softly. I felt my stomach twist into knots as I watched them sit together, their conversation low and intimate, their hands brushing as if by accident. At that moment, I knew. This wasn't just in my head. Something was happening, right under my nose. And now I had the proof. The hardest part was realizing that it wasn't some random fling. It was deeper than that. There were feelings involved, and that's what hurt the most. I had seen enough. My hands shook as I shut the app, my mind racing with thoughts I wasn't ready to face. Betrayal. Lies. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to calm down. It wasn't time to confront them. Not yet. I needed a plan. A way to deal with this without losing control. The shadows they thought they were hiding in had betrayed them. Now it was my turn to watch, to wait, and when the time was right, I would act. I spent the next few days in a fog of disbelief, still haunted by what I had seen. My hands trembled each time I replayed the footage of Barbara with Rudolph, the laughter, the looks, intimate in ways that should only exist between a husband and wife. But there was something else gnawing in me, something deeper, as if the betrayal went beyond just Rudolph. And I couldn't shake the suspicion that Barry, the other friend I had trusted implicitly, was involved too. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I came home later than usual. My heart sank when I noticed Barry's car parked a few houses down. This time, I didn't hesitate. My hands clenched into fists as I rushed inside, heading straight to the bedroom where I had hidden the small surveillance screen linked to the cameras. The monitor flickered to life, and there they were, Barbara and Barry, sitting on the couch, too close for comfort. At first, their conversation seemed casual, but it was the way they looked at each other, the way Barry's hand lightly touched her arm, that told me otherwise. I watched, barely breathing, as Barry moved closer, his voice too low to hear, but the intent was clear. Barbara didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, allowing him to kiss her. The kiss deepened, growing more intense, and before I knew it, Barry's hands were all over her. "How long have we been having an affair?" Barry whispered against her neck, his voice suddenly audible. "A little over a month," Barbara murmured, eyes half closed. "Rudolph doesn't know. At least, I don't think he does." My stomach churned. The betrayal was deeper than I imagined. Not only was she having an affair with one of my best friends, but she was also deceiving the other. They had all played me for a fool, and I had been blind to it. Barry kissed her again, his hands wandering, and the sight of it made my blood run cold. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I switched off the monitor, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of their deception felt like it would crush me. I had lost control of my life. Barbara's affair with Rudolph had been painful enough, but now Barry too. It was as if everything I knew, everything I had trusted, had crumbled around me. It wasn't just one betrayal. It was a web of deceit, spun right under my nose. I sank into a chair, numb from the realization. This was no longer about Barbara's infidelity. This was a conspiracy between the people I had allowed closest to me. They had both crossed lines, and for what? For the thrill? For a few moments of stolen pleasure. The rage that bubbled inside me was like nothing I had ever felt before. There was no coming back from this, no mending the broken pieces of our marriage. Barbara had chosen her path, one of deception and betrayal. And now, with Barry and Rudolph both tangled in this mess, I knew I had to act. The next step was clear. I had to put an end to this charade, no matter what it took. Days passed, but the weight of the betrayal only grew heavier on my chest. The more I watched, the more I realized how carefully Barbara and Rudolph had crafted their secret world. They thought they were so clever, hiding their meetings, using coded language, but the cameras never lied. The longer I observed, the more something cold and calculating stirred within me. I could feel the fury simmering just beneath the surface. I wanted justice, but I knew I couldn't handle this on my own. Late one night, after another torturous day of pretending everything was normal, I found myself scouring the internet for solutions. Discreet revenge services. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I stumbled upon a site. It had no flashy ads, no real branding, just a single black screen with a simple message. "We clean up life's messes." It felt wrong, but I was too far gone. I needed to fix this, to take control. I clicked through the website until I reached a form, asking for basic details. It felt clinical, distant, as if I were simply filling out a work request. Name. Problem description. Desired outcome. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. The guilt of what I was about to do almost overwhelmed me, but then I thought of Barbara's smile as she whispered to Rudolph when she thought I wasn't looking. I clenched my jaw and started typing. Henry Simon. Problem. Infidelity involving my wife and two close friends. Desired outcome. End it permanently. I hit send, feeling the weight of my actions settle deep in my stomach. Moments later, a response appeared. "We will be in touch. Be ready." I sat back, staring at the screen in the dim light of my study. It was too late to turn back now. 2 days later, I received a call. The voice on the other end was low and emotionless, like gravel. "Mr. Simon." Yes, I said, my voice a bit shaky. You contacted us regarding a delicate matter. Is that correct? I swallowed hard, steadying my breathing. Yes. We've reviewed your case. We'll handle it, but we need more specifics. What do you mean by handle it? I asked, my throat suddenly dry. The voice on the other end let out a quiet chuckle. We removed the problem. How far are you willing to go? I hesitated, feeling the weight of those words. Remove the problem. It was no longer just an idea. This was real. There was no turning back. I want them out of my life. For good. Understood, the voice replied. We'll make arrangements. You'll be contacted when it's done. Be patient. Before I could respond, the line went dead, leaving me with a gnawing sense of finality. I stared at my phone, still gripped in my hand. What had I just set in motion? I spent the next few days in a state of restless anxiety, waiting for a sign, any sign, that the service had begun its work. Every message, every phone call, made my heart pound in my chest, but no word came. I went through the motions of my life, attending meetings, managing projects, but all the while, my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't focus. I became a spectator in my own life, watching from the sidelines as things unraveled. Then, one evening, something changed. I returned home from work later than usual, finding the house eerily quiet. Barbara hadn't called or texted all day, something that used to be common before. But now it felt like a warning. I stood in the entryway, listening for any signs of life. Nothing. I crept upstairs, my steps deliberately slow, not wanting to alert her to my presence just yet. As I reached our bedroom, I paused outside the door, hearing faint voices. Barbara's voice, soft and almost pleading, filtered through the door. She wasn't alone. Rudolph, we can't keep doing this, she whispered. Henry's not stupid. I told you, came Rudolph's deep voice. I've got it under control. He won't find out. I pressed my back against the wall, my fists clenched. How wrong they were. I already knew everything, and soon so would they. I moved downstairs, making my way to the living room where I could keep an eye on the stairs, watching them from the sidelines of my own home. I felt like a ghost, unseen, unheard, but very much present. The minutes stretched into an hour, each second in agony, but then the front door opened quietly, and a man dressed in black stepped inside. My heart skipped a beat. It was the service. The cleanup had begun. The man scanned the room briefly, his movements calculated before he spotted me lurking in the shadows. Without a word, he nodded, a subtle signal that things were progressing. Then he moved upstairs, barely making a sound, vanishing into the same hallway I had just left. I stood there, gripping the arm of the couch so hard my knuckles turned white. I could hear murmurs from the upstairs hallway, but I didn't move. I couldn't. The plan was in motion, and there was no stopping it now. A few minutes later, the man reappeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly. I felt a sudden rush of dread. This was it. It's done, the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. His expression was unreadable, cold. I swallowed, my throat dry. What happens now? They'll realize soon enough, he replied, not giving any details, and without waiting for my response, he slipped out the door and disappeared into the night, leaving me alone with the weight of what I had set in motion. The day had come. I sat at the dining table, my fingers tapping rhythmically on the polished wood as I stared at the front door waiting. The room felt colder, heavier, as if the weight of my impending confrontation had sucked the warmth from the air. Barbara had been avoiding me since the night Rudolph and Barry had been removed from the equation. There was no more hiding for her. I heard her heels clicking against the floor before she stepped into the room. She paused at the doorway, her eyes flickering with uncertainty, probably sensing the shift in me. Henry, you're home early, she said, forcing a smile, though it barely hid the nervous tremor in her voice. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I motioned for her to sit across from me. She hesitated for a moment before pulling out the chair, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the seat. Barbara, I began, my voice low, calm, but carrying a weight it hadn't before. I think it's time we had a conversation about the truth. Her face paled. I could see her mind racing, grasping for a way out of the web of lies she had spun. Truth. She laughed lightly, though the sound was hollow. What are you talking about, Henry? I leaned forward, locking eyes with her, not giving her the space to wriggle away this time. I know everything, Barbara. The visits, the lies. Rudolph. Barry. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face, but I pressed on. I've known for weeks. You thought you were clever, but you were careless. She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand, silencing her. You let them into our home, I continued, the bitterness spilling into my words. You betrayed me, Barbara. You destroyed what we built together. Her lips trembled, tears welling in her eyes. Henry, I never meant for it to happen like this. It was a mistake. A mistake? I spat the words, anger rising in my chest. A mistake is forgetting to pick up groceries, not having an affair with my best friends. You betrayed me, Barbara. You shattered everything. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands, but I didn't move. My heart had hardened. There was no room for sympathy now. The time for that had long passed. Where are they? She whispered through her tears, her voice barely audible. They're gone, I said, my tone cold, out of our lives for good. Barbara looked up at me, her tear-streaked face a mask of fear. What? What do you mean? I leaned back, my eyes never leaving hers. Don't worry, they're fine, but won't be back. The implication hung heavy in the air, and she knew exactly what I meant. For a moment, the room was silent, except for her shallow breaths. Then she pushed back her chair and stood up, unsteady on her feet. Henry, please, we can fix this. I can fix this. I shook my head slowly, rising to meet her gaze. No, Barbara, it's too late. You broke us beyond repair. The confrontation was over, but the scars it left would last forever. In the aftermath of that confrontation, Rudolph and Barry disappeared from my life. It wasn't a gradual fading away. It was swift, like a door slamming shut. They knew they could never come back from what they had done, and in their own way, they accepted that. Rudolph moved to another city, taking his guilt and shame with him. He left without so much as a goodbye. Rumor had it he couldn't keep his business afloat after the scandal spread among our mutual acquaintances. His once thriving life crumbled, just like the trust he had shattered. As for Barry, he vanished almost overnight. He cut all ties, changing his number and leaving the company he worked for. No one heard from him again. Some said he went abroad, starting fresh where no one knew his name or the weight of his betrayal. I didn't care where they went. I was just relieved to have them out of my life, their absence a necessary void where once there had been friendship. I divorced Barbara and soon met a decent girl whom I married and have been living happily with her for several years.